Welcome, stranger. What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Game Chamber, and finally time to give my full in-depth review of the Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you've been following along ever since the release date, like the hour it released, I've been doing a live playthrough of the game. Unfortunately, I did get sick right at the last little tail end of the game, the last hour or so, so I unfortunately have not streamed anything regarding the final chapter of the game. Eventually I will go through and do some speed run live stream, so you guys will catch up on all of that. But I have beaten the game 5 times at this point, one of which being a professional mode. My first playthrough was on hardcore, so a little bit of a glutton for punishment. And as a bit of a backstory, the original Resident Evil 4 is my second favorite video game of all time, only behind the original Metal Gear Solid. That was my introduction to the Resident Evil franchise. It made me an instant super fan. I started playing everything Resident Evil I could get my hands on, and it has become my favorite video game franchise ever since. And the original Resident Evil 4 is, without a doubt, the video game that I have beaten the most times. I bought every single port for this thing like an absolute shill, and I could not wait for this remake. I had a lot of concern about whether or not they were going to deliver the full extended experience, or they were going to cut this thing down the way that they did Resident Evil 3, and I am here to tell you, after dumping close to 40 hours into this game at this point, and that is not going to be the end by any stretch, I absolutely fucking love what they have done with this remake. So starting off with the positives, I think the most commendable thing that you can say about this is that they delivered almost everything to a T that those of us that adore the original Resident Evil 4 want to have in re-experience in this game. Just about every single set piece, every single boss fight for the most part, even just little individual sequences from the beginning of the village all the way through to the Sadler boss fight. Almost all of it is recreated here, and yet they do it in a way that is darker and has a lot more of a lean into the horror side of Resident Evil. And so it becomes this really brilliant compromise to where everybody that loved the more action-centric direction that the franchise took at Resident Evil 4 gets everything that they loved about that original game recreated here, and everybody that did not like the pulling away from survival horror and slight push into more action gunplay-centric gameplay, they get more of what they loved about those original Resident Evil games. And so I would be very surprised if this is not thought of over time as the definitive version of this game. And I would love to find out in the comment section how many of you guys might have not been a fan of the original Resident Evil 4 but love this new version.
Oh, fuck.
Great.
Hello, ladies.
Sorry, didn't realize it was yours.
And going along with that, not just a more horror-centric direction, but the way that they have modernized so much about this game, from the ability to move while you're shooting, which has become one of the bigger criticisms of something that has aged poorly about the original game, modernization of certain gameplay sequences, the way that they have expanded on certain sequences in certain areas of the game to make them a little bit more intense, even putting in some things in there to kind of trick and troll those of us that know the original game like the back of our hand, like even just the very first segment of the game where the villagers kind of come to try to kill you, and you got the chainsaw guy coming at you, and the old little trick we used to be able to use was to go to the top of this clock tower and just shoot people as they came up. And if you try to do that now and move at all, it's just gonna break the floor and you're gonna fall back down. And it's kind of the game telling you to go fuck yourself with all of your original little tricks.
Popped in on him while he was taking his shit.
all the things like that I just loved discovering on my first playthrough, to where 20 plus hours I dumped into my first playthrough of this game, looking at every nook and cranny, trying to find every single treasure, trying to experience every single square inch of this newly revamped areas of this game, watching every cutscene, all of that, and it was just an amazing experience getting to some newer segments, but also getting to some segments that I know and love and have so much nostalgia for, and seeing what they were going to do to modernize them. And I really enjoyed how this game brought a lot of those classic elements of Resident Evil 4 and merged them with some of the cooler, newer elements that, especially in Resident Evil Village, was a big deal, as far as crafting certain ammo and having the merchant to where you can actually sell treasures, and you can do these little mini tasks, these little side missions for him, which is something that just Village introduced to this franchise. And that was one of the cooler elements of just giving you some busy work, some really neat things to do along the way that I absolutely diverted all my attention to. Every single time I found one of those blue posters, that was now the primary thing that was on my mind to complete before moving on with the story. The way that you can put the treasures together, and there's really an emphasis on kind of mixing and matching certain gemstones to get higher returns, higher amounts of pesetas as you sell these things, as well as the way that they really put much more of a focus on backtracking in this one and do certain things to not only encourage but allow a lot more backtracking, which is something that you could do in sections of the original Resident Evil 4, but that was certainly a much more linear game that franchise had ever seen at the time, to where the original games, it was all about backtracking, finding a key, going back to these original rooms and unlocking things that you weren't able to access before. And I love the fact, again, that they were able to merge both of those gameplay styles of just running through and gunning down monsters from start to finish, while also bringing in a lot of those more classic Resident Evil survival horror elements that just delivers the most well-rounded Resident Evil experience that I think this franchise has delivered yet. Graphically, the game is immaculate. I've loved the way that they have modernized so much about this, from the creature designs to just the certain settings that we have throughout here. The castle was always my favorite segment of the video game, so being able to go through these dark little halls and dungeons and seeing things like the Garradors, I used to call them Wolverine, and seeing the new way that they've brought those creatures to life. You have things like the Regenerators and the Iron Maidens that I was dreading seeing how they were going to bring that thing into the modern era, and they did not disappoint.
Keep playing that fucking breathing sound over and over and over again. Oh shit.
Fuck are you?
And speaking of the Regenerators, the sound design in this game is incredible as well. Just hearing things in the distance, especially if you wear headphones, you got that 3D audio thing going on, and you get into those final little segments of the game and you start hearing that familiar breathing, that and everybody that loves the original game was going, oh fuck, it's time.
You shut up! I'm so fucking scared right now, you shut up!
And pretty much all of the voice acting across the board, save for one that I will talk about, I thought was damn good as well. These are iconic characters, these are iconic representations of these characters within their story in this franchise. There's a lot of iconic lines from the original Resident Evil 4. Some of them are brought over, some of them are left in kind of the original, a little bit maybe too campy for this game. Some people might have some opinions about that, but all across the board for the most part, from Leon to Ashley to some of the villains like Krauser, I actually thought was a bit of an improvement. Sadler, a little bit less campy, a little bit more of a serious tone to his character. Just some really nice jobs done by the voice actors. And finally, something that I was most curious about what they were going to do in this new version, I much prefer the utilization of Ashley that we get in this version to the original. Now, I was never on the train of just despising the character or despising every single gameplay segment where she was in company with me. I never found it to be overly difficult. But without a doubt, the voice acting, the lines, the constant just like escort mission-esque style of her segments of the game are certainly among the less appreciated elements of that original game. And I think they did a great job to kind of modernize that here with having her follow you closely if you're going to run through certain segments, or hang back if you're going to take out a few enemies to kind of clear a path for her. The voice acting, and especially just the yelling out constantly whenever she is actually getting picked up or she's getting attacked is not nearly as grating on your nerves. Some of the cutscenes and some of the interactions with the character, again, toning down a little bit of the campiness from the original. Not too much, but just enough. I thought that she's a character that's going to have a lot more people endear themselves to her this time around versus calling her out as, you know, what, the most annoying character in Resident Evil history. I don't know about that, but certainly a large group of people that believe so. Moving on to the mixed elements, and before I get into my mixed and my negative, it needs to be said, I genuinely think that this game might be the greatest video game remake of all time. It is certainly in the conversation. And just a couple of months after Dead Space, and I was saying something very similar to that, it's about to be a hell of a year for us survival horror fans. But there are some things about the game that I wish they maybe would have done a little differently, or I'm not quite sure how I land on it, and a couple of small elements that I genuinely don't like some of the decisions that they made, so we're going to get into all of that now. The main one for me as far as a mixed element is just a couple of the newer gameplay elements here regarding the attach case as well as your charms and the things that you have to put together to have certain buffs on your character. There's things like certain healing abilities will heal you like 15% more. You'll have a little bit more probability of certain ammo drops. You might have a little bit faster pace whenever you are sprinting, or maybe take a little bit less damage. There's some that just give you discounts to the merchant himself. And while I appreciate the fact that they're trying to continue to implement little things in here to add some strategy to the game, to where when you go to actually sell things or tune up your weapons, you need to go and kind of reconfigure your case for all of the merchant discounts, and then maybe you're going into a boss battle, you want to change up your healing abilities and things like that, and then when you're going into just regular old gameplay segments, you might be low on handgun ammo, and so you change your charms over to get more handgun ammo. I like the idea there. Yet, I think it's very aggravating that you can only change those up at typewriters, and I also feel like limiting you to 3 charms occasionally makes it an annoying experience to go into the typewriter, change up all your charms, go do something with the merchant, go back to the typewriter, change up all your charms, do a gameplay segment, go in, change your charms. It's just something that I had to change up too frequently to really utilize the strategy there. So the idea I like, the execution I was a little bit mixed on, as well as the explanation of all of that. I didn't feel like the game explained the importance of that stuff very well, to the point where I had a friend of mine that was on Facebook saying about, you know, how much they hate the fact that there's just no ammo available in this game for such an action-centric experience. And I had to tell him, like, hey, that's because they want you to use the charms. If you're low on ammo, they want you to switch your charms out to this until you're, you know, back up to inventory, and then you swap it back out for whatever you're low on by that point. And they had no idea that that was such an important integration into this game. So idea good, execution maybe a little sloppy. Not to mention the fact that the whole system of how you gain these charms with the random little assortments of these coins that you get, in some of which you collect along the way, some of which you can buy from the merchant, most of which you'll get from the skeet shooting segment, that was really fucking annoying, to where you just have to throw caution to the wind, roll the dice, and say, okay, well, I only have 6 coins, so if I get 2 copies, I guess I just got fucked out of 6 coins. You can, of course, save your game, go down, try it. If you get something shitty, go back, reload your game. But again, that's annoying, that's redundant, that's stupid. I would have much preferred something to where you can actually exchange specific coins for specific charms rather than do this little random assortment thing like an old school gumball machine. That part of it I didn't like. Another mixed element, which has always been something all the way back to the original game that I've always felt a little iffy on, is we don't get any more real backstory with the character of Krauser. And when I actually first played Resident Evil 4 way back in the day, and I had not experienced any other Resident Evil game, when I was going back and playing Resident Evil 2 with Leon, I assumed Krauser was going to be a character in there because there was seemingly all this history between these two characters. And there's not. This is the only game that that character comes into. And so with the remake, although you do get like a quick little still of the two characters in like the opening montage, and there is some more dialogue and some more collectibles where you can kind of research some of the history there. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of a setup with that character, to where his entrance, his fall to being such a huge villain had a little bit more tragedy to it, a little bit more weight to it. As is, while I love the character and I love his boss fights, especially the way they've modernized them, he still feels like this random addition into the game because we don't know who the fuck this guy is. We don't have any history with him. We're just told about the history. Another mixed element is the Salazar fight, and this is my least favorite boss fight in this game. And this, up until very recently, was hard in my negatives. I don't like the way that this boss battle was laid out. I don't like the mechanics that are here. I thought that it was extremely frustrating and not in a fun way. Just the amount of damage that this character takes and just continuously moves around, and the only openings that you get to shoot it is during the times when it is spewing this noxious acid blood shit on you, these little black bubbles, and so it's extremely difficult and has such a short window of time to not get hit and damage him at the same time. I had an absolute bitch of an experience trying to beat this character on hardcore. And so I don't like the way that the boss battle was changed from the original. I definitely prefer the original version of the Salazar boss fight. However, there is something that's a little goofy that makes me appreciate it a bit more. And if you did not know this, prepare to be enlightened. Apparently, there is this goofy little, no pun intended, Easter egg in here to where if you have a golden chicken egg, you can throw the golden chicken egg twice at Salazar and it two-shots him. Doesn't matter what difficulty it's on. It's on professional, doesn't matter. 2 eggs, he's done. Because there's this whole thing earlier in regards to the character's vanity to where it's a side mission for the merchant. If you throw an egg and deface the painting of Salazar, you get a whole bunch of spinels for it. And so if you take that concept into the boss battle, you can actually beat him fairly easily. And even if you just throw him with 1 golden egg, he takes like, I think 3/4 of his health away, and so it's not too hard of a job after that. That makes it more tolerable because it is such a goofy thing and is such a kind of a clever little Easter egg in there. But I still don't think that the modernization of that boss battle was done very well. And that's the only boss battle I would say that for. All the rest of them, I think, are just as good, if not better. Another mixed element is the seemingly just bullet sponge invulnerability that just regular base level enemies seem to have in this game. And this has been a trend with these Resident Evil remakes. I felt the same way about Resident Evil 2, where I'm shooting zombies in the head and they're still walking towards me. And I shoot them 2 or 3 more times in the head. Oh my God in heaven! And they're still walking towards me.
What the hell is wrong with you?
This game is an even more extreme version of that, to where, you know, I like a challenge. I certainly like having a little bit more strategy, a little bit more attention there, a little more intensity in some of these sequences, which is why it's in the mixed and not negative. But God damn, when you dump a half a fucking clip into just one regular old Ganado, you're just like, what the fuck? Just die!
Why is he still coming?
Oh fuck! Oh fuck!
No! Why is he still coming?
And finally, I don't like the fact that we don't have the U3 boss fight. There's some other smaller segments of the game that have been omitted here. One that a lot of fans have been upset by is the little laser grid sequence that was inspired by the first Resident Evil movie. I wasn't crying too much about that one, but the U3 boss fight was always one of the cooler boss fights to me because it's such a different boss fight. The gameplay style of it is so different than your traditional just shoot it in the big pulsating eye style of most Resident Evil boss fights. And I was bummed out to find out that they completely cut that from the game. Now, the reason it's mixed is because they give you so much, they deliver so much in this game, and there's things that have been modernized and expanded to where they actually have given you more by the end of it than the original Resident Evil 4 game did. But as a fan, I'm still bummed out. That's the one omission in this game where every time I get to that last little stretch, I'm like, fuck, man, why couldn't they have just stuck it right here? It's that greedy bitch inside of me where I'm like, oh, I just want it. And now moving on to the negatives, of which I have 2. And in the grand scheme of things, they are both pretty small, but they are absolutely things that I did not like by the end of my experience with this game. First one, and I want to be careful here because I have already seen it well documented that the voice actor that they hired to portray Ada Wong has gotten a lot of backlash. She has been severely mistreated over social media, and I am fully encouraging you not to do that. If you're somebody that's going to attack the voice actor for the job that they did, you're a fucking coward. Please do not add to that bullshit.
You look like you've got something to say.
With that being said, I did not like the casting.
Don't think too hard, handsome. See you later.
I thought that her voice was extremely stiff. I thought that it was missing some of that seductive femme fatale quality that I expect from the character of Ada Wong, and it was very jarring the first couple of cutscenes that we got with her. She's not a major character throughout the game, so the scenes that she's there are pretty important. And by the end of the game, I just never got used to it. At 5 times now, 5 playthroughs of this game, it still has not grown on me. That is the one voice acting job that I felt like just did not work here. And I don't know if I'm on an island with that. Clearly I'm not if she's getting bullied off the internet. But very similar to what I said in my Super Mario Brothers movie review, I don't blame the voice actor for that. They have their voice, they auditioned, they were picked and hired for the role. I think that whoever made the decision to hire her could have done a better job. So no hate to her whatsoever. I hope she goes on to do some better things, and if she does return as Ada Wong, which I doubt, I hope maybe she changes up her voice a little bit, but I did not like her voice for Ada Wong. And my final negative is something that you are either going to passionately agree with me about or not give a flying fuck about. There is no middle ground with this. And it's in regards to the trophies for the game. I'm an absolute trophy hunting whore. When I love a game, I stop at nothing almost until I have the platinum within reason. And this is one of those games that it might take me a year or so. I don't know if I'm gonna do it all in my first experience, my first month or so with the game, but I will eventually get the platinum for this game. However, something that is extremely fucking annoying about the way that they set up the trophies of this game that I have never seen a game do before. Typically when you have trophies that are attached to certain difficulty modes, like easy mode, medium, hard, if you beat the higher difficulty modes, you automatically get the trophies for the lower difficulty modes, because it's a little bit ridiculous if you play through a game on hard for them to expect you to then play through it on easy and medium just to get those 2 respective trophies. And I have never seen a game not be stacked that way. Resident Evil 4 is the first one to where there is trophies for beating the standard mode on S+, beating the hardcore mode on S+, beating professional on S+, I believe, or just beating professional in general. I could be wrong about that. Regardless, if I play through the game on professional and I get an S+, I should unlock the other ones. The fact that I have to play through an entire playthrough on standard mode to get that rating, then restart the game from scratch, play through the entire game through on hardcore mode to get the S+, then start over from scratch and do it again on professional, that is extremely fucking annoying, redundant, and that is more likely to burn me out on the game than make me come back and just enjoy continuously replaying it. And so of all of the fun that I've had going through the story-based trophies and the collectible trophies, and I did get the one for actually completing the game on professional, some of those I have enjoyed, and I'm gonna really look forward to going through the one where you only have a knife and a handgun, and there's one for not using a healing item, there's one for not talking to the merchant the entire gameplay. I look forward to those wacky ass playthroughs, but the fact that I just have to grit and bear 2 entire playthroughs to pop 1 trophy that I've already fucking completed on a higher difficulty, that annoys the shit out of me. So all in all, guys, I thought this remake of Resident Evil 4 delivered everything just about that I wanted, some things that I didn't know that I wanted, and just it's a awesome, incredible experience, not only for veterans and people that hold the original game so near and dear to their heart, but also for new gamers or maybe ones that didn't really like the gameplay style of the original Resident Evil 4 and never really gave much attention to it. I think it's genuinely one of the greatest remakes ever made and has a solid chance over time of becoming what I would consider the greatest game in the Resident Evil franchise. It's that fucking good. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for a collection of all of my live streams regarding this game. I'm also going to point you towards an older ranking that I did when Village came out, and I will change this after I do an updated ranking. Please like and share this video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything coming out in the future. And as always, remember, the Game Chamber is Commander Shepard's favorite channel on the YouTubes.